Kia ora koutou e hoa mā, ko Collin toko ingoa no Texas o Kufano kei te noho au ki Papaioia. Hello and welcome. My name is Collin Bjork. My family's from Texas. I live now here in Palmerston North, Aotearoa, New Zealand, and I'm a lecturer in science communication here at Massey University. I want to offer you a brief video about blogging in the sciences, especially with a focus on sustainability. So in this video, what I'd like to offer you is a three-part discussion. One, what is a blog? And we will look at some examples here. Two, why might you blog in science? And three, how do you blog for science? Okay? First things first, what is a blog? A blog is not just a web page. It is a web page that can be subscribed to. And it is a personal web page, one that is authored and owned by the individual scientist who contributes to, or a group of scientists may contribute to a blog post. So it's not through a larger media organization like, for example, NZ Herald or RNZ. It is independent of the main media dissemination organizations. Okay, so a blog is a personal website that can be subscribed to. Now, granted, blogs nowadays are less often subscribed to. Typically, people just find them through Google searches, but historically, you would subscribe to a blog and get a new notification in your email inbox, and you still can today when a new post is up. So if there's a blog on a topic that you want to follow, you can subscribe, and through an RSS feed, it comes to you. It's actually the same technology that people use for podcasting. So that's what a blog is. And here are some really great examples of blogs in the sciences. I recommend checking out sciblogs.co.nz. Sciblogs is not a blog, it is a collection of multiple blogs, okay? And across many different topics. So I'm sure whatever your interests, your expertise, or whatever your major is, you can find something: science, agriculture, health and medicine, environment and ecology, technology, science and society. They have heaps and heaps of really interesting, really smart, really important blogs here. Go check this out. These are excellent models for the most part, okay? Next, I want to show you a blog by distinguished Professor Robert McLaughlin here at Massey University. It's called Planetary Ecology. It's actually also part of Sciblogs, but here is the actual URL. Again, you can Google it and you'll be able to find it easy as. This is a blog that focused specifically on issues of sustainability. And he's one of the professors at Massey University who's leading our sustainability push. He is a maths professor who has expertise in modeling, among other things, and has taken that interest and expertise and channeled it towards exploring issues of climate change and sustainability. We'll come back to this blog here shortly. So those are a couple of examples of places to find science blogs, because in order to learn how to write a blog post, you'll need to read some blog posts. Alrighty? Now, why? Why might we want to write a blog in the sciences, especially about a topic like sustainability? Well, there are many reasons. One reason, for example, is that nowadays scientists are no longer just working in a lab over a petri dish. They also often have an obligation as a part of a science team, especially as part of a research institution like a university or a Crown Research Institute, to share that information that they find, not just with other scientists and experts, but back with the public, because their research is often publicly funded itself. So it's a two-way street, science. If it's funded by public entities in many cases, then we have an obligation to share that research back with the people who do the funding, namely the everyday citizens of Aotearoa and other countries. So that's one main reason why you might want to do it. You might also want to share urgent information about really important topics like sustainability. So there might be an urgency to it. Also, in a quickly changing scientific world, like with COVID-19, you might have really important information that needs to get out super fast rather than going through the longer process of academic publication. You might have research that goes through both channels, through academic publication, which often takes a long time to go through peer review, and also shorter stuff that goes straight to the public. And this is where Dr. Susie Wiles comes into play. She was named New Zealander of the Year. She is a microbiologist, and she was named New Zealander of the Year because of her excellent work in science communication. She collaborated collaborated with cartoonist Toby Morris, who works for Spinoff. You've probably seen these cartoons around. If you haven't Googled them, they're really, really smart and helpful tools for helping the public understand the complex science behind COVID-19 and how they can keep themselves and their whānau and their communities safe. So Dr. Susie Wiles is a really great example of using public science communication to improve the public good. She won New Zealander of the Year not because of her independent, outstanding research, which is already really good, and not because she's a celebrity now, but because her public communication of science is a good. It makes New Zealanders safer and better off. And that's a really big payoff that scientists that can have on communities today. So there are some few reasons why you might engage in public science communication, like writing a blog post. Now, I want the third part, and the kind of biggest part of today's video, is about how to write a blog post. And before I get into the kind of one catch-all slide that I have here about things to think about when writing a blog post, I want to connect to some ideas that you've been thinking about in the past couple of weeks, namely Mātauranga Māori and intersections with Western science. And what I want to suggest here is, if your assignment asks you to find some additional sources to think about how the sources on this particular scientific topic connect with issues of Mātauranga Māori, you're talking about connecting kaupapa Māori and te ao Māori ideas in the content of writing your blog. But you might also, some of you might be interested in having a kaupapa Māori approach to writing the blog itself. So not just what you say, the content, talking about Mātauranga Māori and science, but actually you might have a Mātauranga Māori, a kaupapa Māori approach to writing the blog post itself. And if that interests you, if that excites you, if that seems important to you, then I recommend giving this blog a look. It's by Associate Professor Leonie Pihama, who is at the University of Waikato, and her blog is here, kaupapamaori.com. You can Google this particular title on writing a kaupapa Māori blog, and she gives really fruitful discussion in this blog post of what a kaupapa Māori approach to blogging might look like. And crucially, she talks about a kairangaranga of words, of being a weaver of words, and what it means that it's not just you telling your own story, but you weaving your story together with the stories of others to strengthen your community. For her, a kaupapa Māori approach to blogging is always collective. So you might think about, what does that mean for you if you want to choose a kaupapa Māori approach to writing your science blog post? All right? Useful resource there. So now, with that brief introduction to how, that's one particular approach that you might read up on, I want to show you this slide. I'm not even going to put it in presenter mode because I'm going to toggle back and forth between this slide and some of the examples. The first thing you have to do when you sit down and figure out how am I going to write my blog after you found and read your sources is you need to think about what is the situation that you're writing for. And the situation has at least 4 key ingredients. You are one of them. Your audience is another. What's the topic that you're writing about, and what is the exigency? So your audience, you want to think carefully about who are you writing for. Okay, if you're writing for your students, fellow peers, what do you know about them? Are they all like you? Are they different than you? How are they different than you? Are they all Kiwi citizens? I can tell you right now, they're not, probably. And because I've taught international students in every course that I've taught here. What about, where are they? Are they all based here in Aotearoa? I can tell you no as well. In my time at Massey University, I have taught students across all 6 continents, except for Antarctica, of course. That's the 7th. So all 6 permanently inhabited continents by students. So you actually have a very rich and diverse audience. You want to think carefully about who you're writing for and what you know about your audience, because the way that you write will be different for different kinds of people, different kinds of audiences, okay? Topic. What is your topic? How much do your readers know about your topic already? Who else has said important things about your topic? You want to know carefully, not just what content you want to say, but the selection of content depends on these other factors: your audience, yourself, and your exigency. Now, why does you matter? Typically in science writing of reports and formal documentations, the author, the writer, is hidden right? We talk primarily about the findings, the research, the content itself, and we obfuscate, we hide the author or the writer. But blogs, science blogs, give an opportunity, if it suits your topic and your audience and your exigency, to bring a bit of yourself into the blog. And we see that some in the Kopapa Maori approach, and some of the SciBlogs approaches also do that as well. So you might want to think about your own role, how much of you is appropriate, your own lived experience is appropriate to bring in, and exigency. People have been talking about sustainability for a long, long time. People have been talking about science for an even longer time. So what is it that you are bringing to your topic that's new and important, urgent right now? Exigency. Let's look at an example of all four of these things: audience, topic, yourself, and your exigency, in a SciBlog example. And I'm going to go to technology because I know sometimes ICT students can struggle to see the connections between sustainability and ICT, but in fact, of course, we know carbon footprints of data centers and things have massive impact on climate change and sustainability. And I think that the technology example, specifically this one, gives an interesting connection of technology, science, and in this case, emissions from utes. So let's look at this. And again, we're thinking about audience, topic, yourself, and exigency. How do these four things shape the way that they write? Okay, so the first thing you can look at is titles. All blogs have titles. Your blog will need a title. You might even do a comparative study of a bunch of blogs. What patterns do you notice in titles? What do you see? How long are the titles? How short are the titles? What kinds of words are in the titles? Of course, titles are important for search engine optimization, for finding your actual blog post. That's a crucial element. This one includes a question. That's interesting. It includes a kind of a pun or a play here on breaks. So think carefully about your title and what kinds of readers, what kind of audience your title attracts. You might also look at the very beginning, the opening. Explore your inner beast. What kind of audience is that opening sentence for? Okay, what does that sentence tell us about who this author thinks the audience is and how they're appealing to or reaching that audience with their scientific information? It's very different than the opening sentence to this blog. New Zealand's Climate Change Commission is facing its first legal hurdle, blah, 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 blah. Okay, what does this first sentence tell us about the audience that Professor McLaughlin is writing for? Yeah, so the point is that there aren't hard and fast rules of exactly how to write for a blog. What there are is an awareness of how subtle differences in who your audience is changes the way that you write. Okay, if you actually look, this Robert McLaughlin article about sustainability on Planetary Ecology blog is also, I'm scrolling fast, I realize it, also published at The Conversation, which is a sort of academic news source. So it's clear that there's a very academic audience, a learned, perhaps PhD holding audience that is a primary audience who Professor McLaughlin's writing for. Whereas this article is perhaps by Christy Wilde and Alistair Woodward at University of Auckland, is perhaps written for a different audience if it starts this way. The 3.5-ton ram eats utes for breakfast. Okay, so think carefully about who your audience is, what you know about them, your topic. Okay, what's the approach to talking about utes and emissions here? What information do they include and exclude? You might look at you and exigency. So look at the exigency here in this one. They're using the recent farmer protests as an opportunity to say, hey, this thing is important. It's clearly a publicly contested issue. We want to weigh in on this issue with our background in science and provide a scientific perspective on this issue. But they're tying it to an urgent public debate right now, which is the so-called ute tax. See if your topic has a similar exigency. Even if the sources that you find are a year or 2 or 5 years old, maybe there's a contemporary issue that you can connect yours to give it a kind of exigency. And again, you might also look in terms of in terms of how much the writer plays a role here. Both this article and Robert McLaughlin's tend to hide the author a little bit in that traditional science mode. They don't say I or we much, if at all. You might want to think about what the advantages and disadvantages that has for their specific audience. All right. So those are 4 key things. Now, lastly, I want to just briefly point out a few other things you might look for, because it's not just what you say in a blog, it's how you say it. Because you could write about the same topic in a blog post and the same topic for a technical report, but the way that you would write it, the how, would be very, very different. Sometimes you might look for hooks. Do blogs open with a hook? If so, who is it trying to hook, and how? What kind of language do they use? When and where do they use expert and non-expert language, technical, scientific jargon? Okay, how clear and concise are they, and how do they write clearly and concisely? How long are their sentences, for example? How short are their sentences? Do they employ stories and narratives? Do they have characters who go on a journey, like the farmers protesting, or the lawyers contesting the climate change policy here in Aotearoa? How much do they have stories with characters that have a beginning, middle, and end? Some of them have more, some of them have less. Again, it depends on your situation. How do they do paragraphs? Paragraphing, typically, you start a new paragraph when you have a new idea, but of course, paragraphs on blogs tend to be much shorter, in part because they're cramming in a bunch of different ideas in a small amount of space, but in part because the materiality of how blogs are read. They're read on computers rather than in books, and oftentimes they're read on smartphones or other mobile devices, which means that you have a smaller set of physical real estate on which to read, which changes the way you approach paragraphing. Tone is very tricky. How do you tell tone? What key words can influence your understanding of the tone? And how do those authors convey it? Do they convey a despairing tone, an attacking tone on the farmers? Are they sympathizing with the farmers? Right? So there's lots, and what words clue you into that? I'll give you a hint. A lot of times it's adjectives and adverbs, and sometimes the verbs themselves can tell you things about tone. And visuals. Visuals are essential parts of blogs. You look at most all blogs have a central visual at the top. But they also include usually other visuals. Here's an including of a video about that specific promotional that they were talking about, that Ram eats utes for breakfast. Sometimes they include social media posts like Twitter or Facebook posts. So there's all different kinds of ways that you incorporate visuals for specific purposes that serve your topic, your audience, your specific situation, and your exigency. And lastly, how do they cite their sources? There are lots of different ways of doing this. Of course, internal and external linking is a crucial way of web text. You link to the pages where these sources can be found. You also sometimes see parenthetical citations, maybe in APA style, for example. But again, which style you see, APA citations or internal links or both, depends on the audience. It depends on who your readership is, depends on what your topic is, where your sources are coming from. Are they printed sources? If so, it'll be difficult to hyperlink to a print-only source, those kinds of things. So this is all to say, when you're blogging, first, read blogs to understand better how to write them. Study the patterns that you see. Think specifically, number 2, about your own situation and the components of that. And number 3, after you've done all of the reading and the thinking of your own situation, start writing and think about not just what you say, but also how you say it. Tēnā koe.